Cool. Great. And then set that to meeting owl. And then we'll set the meeting owl camera. Marina, do you mind talking?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Cool. Okay.
Yay.
Cool. Awesome.
And
And
I'm also
then
presenting. Can you guys see the screen?
hold on. We're about to bring you over
Okay.
this way. It is awesome. Cool. Great. And then we'll turn on the camera. Cool. Great.
Yay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the patience. Right. You let me know when I'm good to get started.
Hey, Mariana, you have until about 12. I really apologize about the whole issue here, but welcome everyone. This is Mariana. She's from PwC, and she'll be talking about designing trust in the age of uncertainty, how designers shape meaning, feeling, and care in AI. You can go ahead.
Okay, so let's start here because I know this is in the room and I know some of you have been thinking about this since maybe before you walk in today, maybe since last semester, or maybe since you watched an AI tool build something in seconds that you would have spent all week in studio building. And it's a weird feeling, isn't it? You're learning this craft, you're falling in love with it. And meanwhile, there's this thing in the background saying, oh, I can do that thing too, faster, cheaper, without the all nighter. So let's not pretend that's not here. Let's go ahead and talk about it. And I want to be honest with you. I'm not going to tell you that that fear is irrational. The production work, the make it pixel perfect, the layout from a brief stuff, AI is getting really good at that really fast. So that's not a maybe, that's already happening. So the question I've been sitting with, and I think it's a question that matters a little bit more, is what's left. So when the tools handle production, when they can generate and optimize and iterate at a speed that we genuinely cannot, what is the thing that still needs a human? What's that part of that the machine can genuinely cannot do? I've been working on this question for a while now, not in theory and but in practice. As I mentioned, I design AI powered platforms at PwC, and I work across all kinds of industries. They're messy, complex problems where AI is really embedded into their day to day and the products they use. And I keep arriving at the same answer. The thing that AI can't do, the thing that makes your work irreplaceable, is design trust. AI can make the interface, it can write copy that sounds warm, and it can optimize a flow until its conversion rate is perfect. But it cannot care about the person that's using it. It literally cannot look at a moment in the experience and say, oh, this is a moment where someone might be scared, and I need to be honest instead of efficient at this moment. That decision to care, to be honest, to hold someone's uncertainty with respect, that is a human decision. And that's a design decision as well. And honestly, that's why you all still matter. That's why the whole field still matters. And that's what I want to talk to you guys today. I'm Mariana Conde. I studied systems engineering and design at Illinois. First, I really wish I was there in the room right now and couldn't make that trip, but I'm based out of New York, so I'm joining you virtually, which is not how I imagined giving this talk, but thank you for welcoming me. And that building where you're sitting, that didn't exist when I was there. The Siebel Center for Design was under construction the whole time I was a student. So I never got the chance to sit in a place like that. I was over there in the engineering buildings, loving system thinking, but I kept bumping against the edges of what my very technical program offered in terms of creativity. And there wasn't really a path for that while I was there. So I kind of made one up and I created my own secondary field option within my major. I called it Product Design and Development. And I basically stitched together a design curriculum with engineering curriculum. Um, and I just created that bridge myself because it didn't exist yet. So now you are all sitting in that bridge. And yes, I'm a little jealous, but I'm also mostly excited for all of you because you have something that I didn't, and I want to help you see what you can do with all of it. And the thing that I learned at Illinois that shapes my work to the most today wasn't a framework or a tool. It was a way of seeing the world. System thinking taught me that the most important stuff in any system is invisible. The trust part, the trust between those parts, the assumptions that no one questions, and the relationships that hold everything together. That's exactly what's at stake when we talk about AI. We were trained in a world where good design meant clarity. You take something confusing and you make it clear. You reduce friction, you remove ambiguity, you create this smooth, predictable path where the user always knows what's going to happen and it happens every time. And that worked brilliantly when systems were deterministic. When you pressed a button and the same thing happened every single time you pressed it. But AI broke that promise, not because it's bad, but because it's fundamentally different. AI is probabilistic, it's opaque, it changes over time. You give it the same input twice and you might get two different answers. And the system itself cannot explain why it did what it did. So now you're a designer and the thing you're building on top of can't even give you certainty. It cannot guarantee outcomes and it cannot promise you it's right. What do we do with that? Let me show you something real. This is Google Stitch. It's one of the new AI design generators, and I gave it a real brief. Fundi is an organization in Argentina that works with adults with disabilities. They offer therapeutic programs, vocational training, community integration, and daily support. It's basically a community where they can go and live there independently. Everything they do is rooted in this belief that every person deserves autonomy and dignity and a life that feels meaningful to them. That's the kind of work where every design decision carries real weight because you're not just designing for engagement metrics, you're designing for someone's experience of independence, of belonging, of being seen as a whole person. So I gave Stitch that context, and in about 2 minutes, it gave me this. It's genuinely good. It used warm colors, clean layouts, Spanish language. It even picked up the Argentinian words automatically. It included activities, medication tracking, a community section, even a mood check-in. The microcopy says, "Hola Juan, todo listo para hoy. Everything's ready for today." In about 2 minutes, it produced what might take a designer a week or more of wireframing and content strategy. If you're a student looking at this, you're probably thinking, wow, that took 2 minutes. But stay with me because I want to show you something. Look at this part. The panel on the left in the whole interface. So this is how Stitch looks. And it has that little panel towards the corner. The AI isn't just making this design. It's telling you why. It says, I focused on warmth, dignity, accessibility, and autonomy. It's narrating its own reasoning and it's showing you the work. This is not a black box. This is the opposite of a black box. And here's what I want you to notice. That transparency didn't happen by accident. Someone at Google made the decision that the agent should show its reasoning, that the AI shouldn't just produce, but it should also explain itself. And someone at some point designed the thinking engine to be legible. That was a designer making a deliberate choice about trust. And that choice is one of the most important design decisions in this entire product. And I think that's worth pausing on because when we talk about AI and design, we usually talk about designers who use AI, but there are also designers inside the AI, people who shape the thinking engine itself, who decided how the system communicates, how it explains, how it invites collaboration. There's a whole new category of design work that most people don't even think about. And some of you might end up doing exactly that, not designing with AI, but designing the AI, shaping how it earns trust. And that's some of the most important design work happening in technology right now. So let me give you a quick mental model. Think of it as a spectrum. On one end, there's the black box. So AI does its thing, you get an output, no explanation. A lot of the early AI products live there. Users learn to either blindly trust or blindly distrust because there was nothing really in between. On the other end, there's something truly collaborative. The AI shows its work, names its limitations, and invites you to push back, override, or complete what the machine can simply not do by itself. Stitch is somewhere in the middle, and that's progress, real progress, but there's a lot further to go. Because here's what Stitch doesn't do. It tells you what it shows, but it doesn't tell you what it doesn't know. It doesn't say, hey, I've never been to Fundi. I have no idea what autonomy looks like actually for someone who with a disability who is trying to figure out public transportation for the first time. I don't know what happens on a hard day when someone refuses to join the program and the staff has to figure out if they should respect that choice or if they should be worried about the sign of something deeper. It doesn't say, I built this from patterns in my training data, not from being in the room. It can't say that, and it doesn't know how to say that. And that's the gap between what the AI can articulate and what it can't even recognize it's missing. That's where designers live, and that's our territory. So look, I want to be clear. Transparency is a real achievement. The move from the black box to the glass box matters, and it was driven by designers who care. But transparency is the floor, not the ceiling. The ceiling is a system where it tells you, here's what I did, here's what I don't know, here's where I need you. That's not just transparent AI, that's collaborative AI. And figuring out how to design the way that collaboration works, I think that's the defining challenge of our whole generation of designers. So here's something that took me years of doing this work to understand. We think trust is about information. We give people the data, the explanation, the transparency, and they'll just trust the system. But if trust were just about information, the most transparent system would be the most trusted, and that's not really what usually happens. I've sat in research sessions in which people completely ignore the explainability features, and they tell me they just don't feel like trusting the system because it feels cold or because it feels like nobody was really behind it. And they just think that no one gave a damn about what they were supposed to be doing with the system. And that gap between these two columns is where trust lives or dies. On the left is what we build. On the right is what people feel. And our job is really to close that gap, not with more features, but with more intention in our work. So trust really has layers. At the surface, people need meaning. They need to understand what's happening. Below that, we have feeling. The emotional texture needs to be safe and honest. And at the foundation, we have care, the sense that a human being was on the other side of the system and thought about all of them. And you need all three. So I'm gonna take you through each one of these, starting with meaning. I was working on this healthcare platform. It was an AI-powered portal for clinicians. It will analyze patient data, generate a recommendation, and the system gave each recommendation a confidence score. The first version of the design is what you're seeing in the screen. It showed 78% confidence right there on the screen. Really big, super clear, because that's what you do, right? Transparency. But the clinicians hated it, not because the number was wrong, because they didn't know what it meant. Is 78% good? Is that high? Should I do what it says? What if I follow it and it falls in the 22% that's wrong? Who's responsible then? So we'd given them transparency, but we hadn't really given them meaning. They had more information, but less understanding. So we tried something different. Instead of leading with the confidence score, we reframed the output around what it meant for them in terms of their next best decision. So we said there is a strong signal for X treatment. We said based on these 3 factors. Before you act, consider checking this one thing. Here's what clinicians in similar cases have found helpful. So it's the same data underneath, it's just a completely different experience because we turn a number into a narrative and we turn data into meaning. And that's when the trust really started to shift in this group of clinicians. So explainability is a felt experience, it's not a data display. And here's a practical version. These are 3 things you can really do in your day-to-day work. First, translate. Every AI output should answer the question, so what does this mean for me? Second, you want to contextualize it for the users. A number floating in space means really nothing. You need to give people something to compare it to. And third, this is a big one, design for the question behind the question, because the user really isn't asking, what's the confidence level? They're asking, can I act on this? Am I safe? And that's where sense making comes in. Not eliminating uncertainty, but helping people navigate it. Now moving on to feeling. This is something else I've also noticed while I work on AI projects. When you ask people about trust, they don't talk like engineers. They use sensory languages. They say it felt off, it felt cold. I don't know why, I just don't feel it, I don't trust it. That's not a usability problem, that's an emotional one. And I found out that that emotional read predicts trust better than any metric we have, better than task completion, better than comprehension scores. How did it feel? That's what people will remember. So let me tell you about another example. Here we were designing an AI platform for a high stakes context, people using it in moments of real anxiety. And there was a scenario when AI just didn't have enough data to give that recommendation. It wasn't a bug, it was genuinely a situation of uncertainty. The default design was this error state: unable to generate results, insufficient data, please try again later. And I'm sure you've seen this in your day-to-day lives. Every word of that is technically true, and it's the worst thing we could have shown. Because in that moment, unable to generate results doesn't mean try later in their minds. It means you're on your own. Right now, when someone needed the help the most, the system basically just shrugged. So we redesigned it. Same situation, system still doesn't have the answer, but now it says, we don't have enough information yet to give you a confident recommendations. Here's what we do know so far. And here's what would help us help you. Completely different feeling. The first says the system failed. The second one says the system is honest and still working for you. The first one really abandons you. And the second one says, I see you, I'm not going anywhere. And I call that graceful uncertainty. And I know, and I honestly think it might be one of the most important design patterns we have now with AI. I'll stop here because I know we're at time. Is it okay if I continue?
Yeah, you can go. Like, how long do you need?
Like 6 more minutes.
Yeah, you can use like 5-10 more minutes. That's fine.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we talked about graceful uncertainty. It's this way of managing uncertainty in a way that's human. So that's the difference between designing for information and designing for feeling. Both are transparent, both are honest, but one builds trust because trust isn't just about being right, it's about being present. So let's think about Fundi again. That mood check-in that Stitch generated says, ¿Cómo te sentís hoy? How do you feel? 3 buttons, me siento bien, más o menos, no tan bien. I feel good, I feel so-so, I don't feel so good. Now imagine you're an adult with a disability and you're having a really rough morning. Maybe a skill you've been working on isn't clicking and you're frustrated with yourself. Or maybe it's just one of those days where everything feels heavy and you just don't really know why. And the system gives you 3 buttons. Is that being cared for or is that being sorted? A designer who's actually spent time at Fundi, who's sat in the session, who's watched the way staff reads the room and adjusts their approach based on how someone walks through the door in the morning, that designer would probably know to say, "Cómo va tu día? How's your day going?" and then give space for a real response. And it feels completely different from 3 buttons. So AI made the pattern, but the designer knows how to adjust it for a real person. So please do me a favor and go audit all of your error states that you have included in products this week. Seriously, they will tell you more about how your product actually treats people than any other feature in the roadmap. Ask yourself what the user is feeling, what they're doing, and remember that tone and pacing are design materials. And sometimes the most trustworthy thing you can do is slowing down. So now getting to the last layer of trust, which is care. I want to go somewhere unexpected with you for a second. Let's talk about ceramics. When you pick up a handmade bowl, something happens. You can feel that a person made it. You feel the weight is a little bit uneven. Maybe there's a thumbprint in the glaze. And you trust it in a specific way that you wouldn't trust something that came out of an assembly line. Not because it's better, but because it has evidence of a human in it. So you're in a relationship with whoever made that bowl. You've never met them, but you can feel their choices, their hands, their care. That's what trust actually is. It's not just information, it's relationship. There's a writer named Sadi who published this essay called Becoming UnLLMable, and it kind of wrecked me in a good way. She argues that the thing that makes a designer irreplaceable isn't speed or tools, it's taste. And she defines taste as the compression of 1,000 micro decisions made from lived experience. So basically, all the things you've seen, felt, failed at, learned from, everything that adds up to a way of seeing that no model has been trained on. And I think she's right, but I want to push it one step further because taste doesn't just protect the designer, it protects the user. When you decide an error message should be honest instead of corporate, that's taste. When you add a pause before a high stakes action because you know the person needs a breath, that's judgment. And when you build a system that says, "Hey, I'm not sure," instead of making something up, that's care. And those are all human choices, and they're the choices that make a system trustworthy. So I'll give you 3 specific things to look for when you're trying to embed caring into your products. One is restraint, which is the AI recommends, but the human decides. So you don't automate the choice away from them. Second one is honesty. The system names what it doesn't know. It says, "I'm not confident about this," instead of performing certainty. And friction. So this is a deliberate pause, a confirmation step, a moment where the system slows down and says, "Hey, this matters, take your time." All 3 of these are the designer choosing to do less, choosing not to optimize, choosing not to automate. And that's what makes them powerful because care is a decision to be inefficient on behalf of another person. And no AI will ever make that decision. We know that. So let's come back to Stitch one last time. The agent log says, "I focused on creating a warm, dignified, and highly accessible environment." Those are beautiful words. They're also our words. Dignity, accessibility, autonomy, that's UX vocabulary generated by the machine. But here's the difference between vocabulary and practice. In practice is the designer who spent time at Fundi before ever opening Figma, who learned that "Hola Juan" is correct, but "Juanchi" is what makes him laugh, who sat with Juanchi's family and heard that what they hope for him and what scares them, and let that conversation change the way that the notification system was designed. You can't really prompt your way into that. That's earned knowledge, and that's being in a relationship with the people that you're designing for. That's what care actually is. The people who built Stitch thinking engine were practicing their own version of care for you, the designer, using the tool. They wanted you to understand that the AI was doing and that's real. Now your job is to extend that care one step further through the tool to the person on the other end, to Juanchi, to his family, to the staff member who's having a hard day too. So there's this chain of care that runs from the people who build AI tools through the designers who use them to the humans that are whose lives are shaped by what we make. So please don't break this chain. And care is not a feature, it is a sum of every choice that a designer makes that says, hey, a person was here. Okay, so before I close, I want to zoom out for a second because I think we have a narrow picture of what being a designer in the age of AI means. As I mentioned, it usually means using tools in your workflow, true, but that's one path and it's a good one. But there's a second path, designing the AI itself, the thinking engine, the transparency layer, how the system communicates and earns trust. Someone needs to make those decisions and they should be designers. And there's a third path, and it's the one that I find the most exciting, which is designing the trust between AI and humans. That handoff moment, the places where the system says, okay, this is where you take over. That's basically a new discipline, and it doesn't have a name yet. Maybe you could be part of the people who name it. And underneath all of those three paths, there is a bigger shift from problem solver to sense maker. We were trained to remove ambiguity, to make things clear and certain and smooth, but the world you're designing for now doesn't do clear, doesn't do certain. It does probably, it doesn't maybe, it does we're not sure yet. And people navigating this world don't need you to make things certain. They need you to make things navigable, honest, human, and that's a different skill. That's yours. So look, will AI replace me? And how do I design for trust? They're basically the same question. And they have the same answer. You become irreplaceable by caring, by making that care visible in every detail of your products. The tone, the pacing, the friction, the honesty. Every little choice says to the person using the thing, someone was here, someone thought about you. So if you're a student and you're still figuring out what any of this means for you and your life, I want you to hear something. The world does not need more people who can make things faster than AI. It really doesn't. What it needs are people who can hold uncertainty with grace, who can sit with ambiguity and not rush to try to solve it, but instead turn it into something that feels honest and safe and genuinely cared for. And that's not a soft skill, it's the hardest, most important skill in technology right now. And you already have more of it than you think. So to close things up, I came back to Illinois to give this talk because this is where I learned to think about systems and to see the invisible stuff underneath them, the trust, the relationships, the assumptions that hold everything together or let it fall apart. AI is going to keep getting better. AI is going to keep getting faster, and it's going to keep doing more of what we currently call design work. But the question of whether someone trusts the thing that they're using, whether they feel respected by it, whether they feel like a person and not a data point, that question isn't going anywhere, because that question is not a technology question, it's a human question. And you're the human in the equation. And honestly, right now, on the other side of a screen from me, I still trust that this landed, because trust doesn't require proximity, it requires care. And I care about what you do next with what you hear about today. So next time someone asks you, and they will, maybe at a party, maybe in an interview, maybe at 2 a.m. when you're wondering if you chose the right career, will AI replace designers? And here's what you'll say. AI can generate, AI can optimize, AI can predict, but only I can care. And care is what trust is made of. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariana.
Thank you. Feel free to reach out. I know we didn't have much time for questions, but if anything comes up, that's my name. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to connect.
I'm gonna grab the album. It all went fine. Okay, cool. Okay. No audio issues. Oh, cool. Great. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you so much. Take care.